Now, very happy to have on live with us Dylan Douglas. He's been on before. He's a host right here on SiriusXM Progress. His show is Young American with Dylan Douglas. He's an activist. He's also an actor. Hello, Dylan. Nice to see you. Thanks so much for joining us live.
Dean, your new intro to your show, off the chart. I feel like I'm in Top Gun or something.
That's exactly what we were going for. I'm Snake. No, it's not right. Who am I going to be? Goose? No, that didn't end up well for Goose. In any event, it is Top Gun. And we are back with we're taking the fight to them. Like, we are going to steal patriotism back on our side. I'm tired of the idea of giving it up to somehow the right is the patriotic side when Trump just pardoned a guy who killed more Americans than bin Laden. In terms of the Honduras president of Honduras, who 30,000 Americans die from cocaine overdoses every year. This guy sold 400 tons worth of cocaine in America, killed thousands of Americans. He literally killed more Americans than bin Laden, and Trump just pardoned him. The guy just walked out of prison.
The same president who's made going after narco-terrorists the cornerstone of his foreign policy. And, of course, we got a pardon, which is a whole other thing. I mean, the presidential pardon is probably the most broken, I think was the biggest oversight our founding fathers had, and it's something that needs to be addressed.
Well, they couldn't contemplate a Trump, which is kind of remarkable. They just came from a mad king in King George, and you would have thought, they could have a mad person here, but they didn't think so. So, all right, we're going to talk about all that stuff. I want to talk about one thing that dealt with you, though. It's not a surprise. I told Dylan we're going to raise it here. What's really weird is the chronology of this. About 3 weeks ago, I think you were on CNN.
I was.
On that show, I think it was Abby Phillips, and it's a debate show. People have seen it. John Fugelsang, our buddy's been on it. Others have been on it. And you had conversations with different people. One's with Scott Jennings, and who's their MAGA villain. He's been cast as a villain.
He's the foil. Every story needs a opposition.
Right. So and to be blunt, he worked for George Bush. He worked with Mitch McConnell. When I used to go on CNN, he was the reasonable Republican, to be honest. But he realized financially and from visibility, it served his purpose to be MAGA. But in any event, that's his life. I don't care. That's his choice. So you guys have a little debate. No big deal. It happens all the time. But that somehow there's news a couple of days ago about this debate you had with him from 3 weeks ago and implicates you, your parents, and all this stuff. And I have no idea what's going on. Do you have any sense?
Well, I'll give you the lowdown.
The story came out 3 weeks later?
So I went on Abby Phillips literally almost a month ago. Went on just after the shutdown wrapped up. And we got into a heated debate. And he cut a segment where he's just talking over me. I didn't say anything wrong, didn't stumble over my words. Right. He's talking over me. And actually, if you watch the debate, and Scott Jennings, in all fairness, I mean, he's a paid commentator. He's good at his craft, you know. I'm just a guy. I'm not a paid commentator. I do this because it's a passion. I'm not a honed, trained debater. I'm not one of those gotcha guys. But he was in the wrong. We were talking about SNAP benefits. And he said that Democrats voted against SNAP benefits. We didn't vote. There was no vote. We voted to shut down the government over the Affordable Health Care Act, about those subsidies, the COVID-era subsidies that were going away in December will be going away. But the SNAP's benefits, I mean, just to give people context, they had a rainy day fund that's been paid out time and time again. Trump didn't want to pay it. So that was what the debate was about. It was fine. Scott Jennings, he's very good at his craft. I mean, you sort of alluded to, he's a little bit of a hack, but he makes a good career out of it. And he's also got a book that's coming out, and I think that's key to this story. But off the air, he was a very nice guy, and I didn't think anything of it. And that was sort of it. Cut to 3 weeks, almost a month later, this article comes out, the Yahoo News, but it was taken from some very sketchy site. And just so people know, like, my parents are both actors. In the public light, they wrote this article that my parents were so upset about my performance and so upset with CNN that they're blacklisting themselves from CNN. I mean, firstly, my parents are actors, so I don't know what they come on CNN before besides pitching a movie or something like that. But secondly, we're a CNN family. We watch CNN all the time. It's on my house every single day. I go over to see my parents' house. So why it came out, I mean, Scott Jennings has a book coming out about the second Trump presidency. It's called something like A Return to Common Sense, which is an interesting title. I'm sure he believes it. Or maybe he doesn't because he was a Bush guy. I think he just goes wherever the wind goes, but that's besides the point. But it came out in the Daily Mail, which he's a columnist for, and gained some traction. Then he went on a few podcasts and talked about it and created this sort of beef between us, which didn't exist, I thought, and then asked to take my mom out for a seafood dinner, which was sort of bizarre because my mom's happily married to my dad. And I thought Scott was happily married too, but I guess that's not the case.
Yes, I saw that line. Like he'll go to dinner with your mom. I'm like,
A little creepy, I
I'm like,
thought.
where did you get? How weird is this? Like
Yeah.
he had the entree picked out already. Apparently,
I
like
know,
he didn't give it
shrimp.
that much thought. Like and why
Shellfish. I
not
mean,
the
for a
restaurant?
first date, you
Like
go for shellfish, you got shrimp breath the rest of the day. I don't know.
so, it's kind of weird. And look, I remember. I'm not kidding. Years ago, I used to go on CNN all the time, and I'd go on Don Lemon's show a lot, and Scott would be there. And I think I probably talked to him a couple of times. Not, remembers me or not, doesn't matter. But he was actually a reasonable Republican. He was a Bush Republican, and that's what he was there for. And then came the ascendancy of MAGA, and they brought in other people. He was not a MAGA guy at all. Then in this time between Trump's first term and second, I don't know if they cast him or they went to him because CNN is political theater.
Yeah.
And that's the worst part of it. Like,
And I
it's a
felt that,
news
Dean, because
gathering
now
that
I've been
became
on.
theater, and
Sorry
he
to
got
interrupt.
cast in
I'd been on several shows on CNN and MSNBC before, but this was the first debate format, and it really showed me that, and all these networks are complicit in this, is that the format of the show is fundamentally designed to be theater. It's not designed to be informative. It's not designed to be productive to coming together as a country, as two ideologies, or as a listener or viewer getting information. It's purely political theater in how it's designed.
It is. It's like professional wrestling, but on
Yeah.
cable news in a CNN studio. And Scott Jennings is the guy who's got the the can opener in his shorts and takes it out and threatens the guy and hits you on the head or has the fake blood. And that's always now to me. None of that. All of it is theater. You're right. Selling books. The only thing that really troubled me about Scott Jennings was some of the bullshit, like anti-Muslim stuff about Ilhan Omar that he has said, calling her a spokesperson for Hamas and stuff like that. And that happened last year. It's really that's despicable stuff, and that's when he leans into the MAGA stuff. But your parents are, I'm sure, laughing it off. I assume they're laughing it off. I shouldn't speak for them.
I
Are they
was
laughing it
honestly,
off?
well,
Are they like,
it's
what's going
all
on?
fake news, and you would think someone that follows the current president so closely, like Scott Jennings, would realize fake news when he sees it. But he took advantage of it. I mean, again, a book's coming out, and I hope his book does well. I hope I helped in whatever little way I could. I'm sure it's going to do great. I'm sure it's a good read. I mean, to write a book about the foreign policy and domestic policy of our current president and have the title be Common Sense, I think takes a real mastery of the English language and of spin, and I'm sure he's very good at that, so I commend him for doing so. But me, I'm just laughing it off, and quite honestly, I'm sort of flattered in a way, because my parents are who they are. I don't have a tremendously big following. I do this because I love it, because I love my country. I'm sure the same way Scott does what he does in his own sort of twisted way. But yeah, I just took it on the chin. It was my first right-wing attack. I look forward to the second time it happens, and it's just the nature of the game.
It's true, and you've got to have a thick skin about it. And look, Scott Jennings will be replaced by someone else, younger, smarter, better looking, whatever, which is all easy to do in his case. And it will be in a year or two, he'll be gone. There are numerous people who used to go on who were staples on cable news that everyone knew and are gone. There's a point where their contract goes away, and there's really nothing special about them. And Scott Jennings, like others on the right who have ascended, to me, if they were on the left, they'd be in the middle to the lower third in terms of being impressive and being smart and insightful. But on the right, it's a curve. Like, Dylan, if you said, I'm going to come MAGA, you'd have your own show on Fox News and Fox Streaming and Newsmax. You'd get like 3 shows.
Sure.
Like this guy, like I used to be a liberal, and I saw the light, and you're a young guy, boom, you've got everything. I'm just saying, if you do that, I'd like to be your agent.
I appreciate it. I got to stop you there, though, because Scott Jennings did compliment me on the podcast about my good looks. So I got to return it and say there's nobody more handsome in show business or network television than Scott Jennings.
God, I'm going to vomit now as you're joking about this bullshit. So, all right, it's very good. So, all right, we cleared the air, and it was gossip, and it was sad that when I've been in, over the weekend I got some crap on Fox News, which I love. I mean, also don't forget, I want my content comment on. I don't want you to agree with me if you're on the right. You should be upset. And I had posted things about the shooting of the National Guard soldiers. I actually went through the analysis just now on the show. They wrote about me many, many times. That's fine. In your case, it was made up bullshit.
Yeah.
But
I'll tell you, Dean, I'm used to this because of my situation. They weren't commenting on the content of my character or the policy positions that I were putting forward. It was all just, mumbo jumbo gossip about really my parents. And I was sort of dragged into it. And I think it should, because this really kind of took off on Twitter, and it's made the rounds in news publications, and it's sort of a big story. I mean, I'm not a big guy. I'm so surprised. in right-wing circles. And I think it does speak, quite frankly, to this moment that Republicans are facing, where Scott Jennings is going on TV and doesn't even know what the talking points are anymore. He doesn't know what the base wants versus what Trump wants, because it's divided now. It's fracturing, it's splintering. And quite honestly, the American people are quite fed up, I think, at this point with what Scott and the people that he supports are peddling.
Yeah, and it's funny, he accused you and all of us on the left of staying in our little bubble, our very tight little bubble, and we never talk to Republicans or conservatives. And when we get out of the bubble and people stop telling you how smart and good looking they are, I'm reading that line, and then everything is burst. That's not the truth at all. But it is. Again, that's a talking point. I think Scott watches Fox News to find out what the position is and then go on CNN and then repeats it. Because he's not MAGA. I don't care what bullshit, he is not MAGA. This guy is a true and true, real Republican conservative from a different world, and I don't think he's evolving in his mid-40s or late 40s. He made a business decision, and I don't even mock it. That's life. That's the business we have chosen, like in The Godfather. That's it. I'm going to stay who I am. I hope you're going to stay who you are, Dylan. And where the chips, where they fall, they fall. That's it. I hope things work out for all of us.
Amen, brother.
That's my. All right, Dylan Douglas, let's talk some politics right here. So I had you on to speak on behalf of all young people between 18 to 29, and that's what you're going to be doing now. So going back, while we spoke in person, we didn't speak, I think, on the show since the election. But even if we did, I'm going to set this up for a second. AP Votecast said the proportion of 18 to 29-year-olds who supported Harris decreased from 61% in 2020 to 51% in 2024. And obviously that has changed now dramatically. But to set up a little, we don't have to get in too deep. What, in your view, drove the loss of younger people to the Democratic ticket in 2024?
I think it was a number of things. I think the truth of the matter, and I want to get into the weeds here, but we'll just park it for a second, is it was the economy. It was the cost of living. It was economic sentiment. And that acutely touched young people, as it did all Americans in 2024, in the sense that we are acutely aware and acutely vulnerable to economic instability. We are the generation that grew up and going to college, promised college as a gateway to success, having amassed the cost of college at a level that's twice that, literally 200% times what it was when I was born in 2000. So as a generation have amassed all that debt. At the same time, we're entering a workforce where jobs are few and far between, and those that are available are not at a pay rate that matches the debt burden that we have to be in these positions. At the same time, we're living in a world where the cost of living when it's rent is exorbitant, where home ownership, maybe pejoratively for our entire lives, is going to be out of reach. So all those things affected us uniquely, not to mention as young people, we don't have a safety net. We don't have a nest egg. We're just starting out, and oftentimes starting out with a debt burden or debt obligation. So all those things came to play. At the same time, Republicans were very good with the vibes, which I think are important or overlooked. But at the same time, it was the economy, and now we're seeing the worm turn. I mean, just in 2024 alone, 1 out of 3 people believed that the economy was the most important thing in casting their vote in 2024. 1 out of 3, and Trump won that group by 80%, and that was back under Biden. And back then, I think 70% of people believed that we were on the wrong track economically. And I think the Fox News, which again, the viewers, you may roll your eyes, some of you at Fox News, but they have a very, very good poll metric. And just last week, they released a poll that right now in America, 76% of Americans feel negatively about the American economy, and the majority of them blame Trump now versus Biden before for the state of the economy today. So that's where we're seeing the worm change. The worm's turning. That's where we're seeing the change. We saw that change on the election, like 3 Tuesdays ago. What do you call this election, too? I've been trying to find the right word, because it's not a midterm election.
It was off-year election.
Off-year election, yeah, I know that's the word, but it's such a they need to have a punctual, more punchy word for it.
It's an election every year.
Yeah, off-year, on-year, I don't know.
We've got Scott Jennings calling in now to contradict everything you said.
Oh, I can't wait.
No, he's not going to call.
Asking for my mom's number.
When I saw that line about your mom, I'm like, what a sleazeball. But forget.
He's a married guy.
I don't know what his life is, but I can't believe someone's actually married to him. But that's different. Look, so you've got now polling show. We don't even need polling. The election, the off-year election on November 4th. We saw Zoran Mondani win young men by 60%. Won 60%. Spanberger in Virginia won young men by the biggest margin of any man. That was the young men, 18 to 29. Mikey Sherrill crushed by 14 points in that demographic. The common theme was affordability. Apparently that resonated with younger men. Is that your sense as well when you talk to people, your peers?
100%. I think it's, like I said before, particularly in New York. And New York, in a lot of ways, is a different beast. I like to think that it's like its own sort of college in itself. And Mondami once class president. It's such a microcosm. It really is a bubble. But the affordability thing was 100% there. I mean, literally, when asked any other question outside of affordability, Mondami would say, I'm just focused on affordability. I mean, it was the quintessential stay on message, stay on message, stay on message. And it worked. At the same time, Zoran Mondami was a really, really, really fantastic candidate. And I know so many people on the right and on what they would consider the left in New York and elsewhere that are crying their eyes out about Zoran Mondami. And I'm like, say what you will about the guy, about his policies, anything else. I tend to agree with almost everything he has to say. But he was a generational leader that met this moment. And he came out of thin air. And Cuomo could have 100% won. But Zoran Mondami beat him fair and square, and beat him not just on the policy, but how he pushed it. And I think that's very, very effective. And I think a lot of people are going to be taking lessons from him going forward. The other thing that I think is interesting is just the fact that, like we said before, the vibes election 2024, the vibes are off now with Republicans. I think the vibes are off within the party. We're seeing a lot of infighting. I mean, the Marjorie Taylor Greene thing, I can't make heads or tails of it. But the vibes are off in a major, major way. And not just young people, just all Americans. In a state like Virginia, when you looked at the election results, the gubernatorial election results, and near the D.C. area where you have the majority of a lot of government workers that were furloughed or otherwise working without pay, those areas increased, their vote share for Democrats increased dramatically. And those are in areas, and usually when there's government shutdowns, and the Democrats were the one to vote to shut down the government, it's usually the ones that vote to shut it down that get the flack for it and lose the fight. But we won the fight because we found this message in the Affordable Care Act subsidies, the COVID era, which were, come December, are now going to be taken away. And many Americans' premiums are going to go up 100, 200%. 70% of Americans, Republicans or Democrats and independents, believe that keeping those COVID-era subsidies was the right thing to do.
I agree. And it's remarkable that the Republicans are on the wrong side of an issue that's almost an 80-20 issue, which are the famous things Republicans say, we're on the right side of 80-20 issues. This one, you're not. By the way, today Donald Trump was asked at the cabinet meeting in between naps. He napped a lot at the meeting because he's sleepy. But he was asked a lot about affordability. And he literally said, hey, Matt, do we have that clip? Can we play, it's a short clip number 2. This is from today.
Yeah, Michelle. When you talk about affordability, is going forward, are the American people, do you believe, getting impatient with the reforms that you're making? They've talked about, it's about...
I think they're getting fake news from guys like you. Look, affordability is a hoax that was started by Democrats.
I love this. I hope he repeats this from now to November. Yeah. It is the most tone-deaf approach to the issue that I've ever heard from a politician ever. Like, at least they give lip service. Yeah. Like, we're working on it, blah, blah. He's like, it's fake. If you're paying more, you're a liar, you're a Democrat. I've never heard this. This is insane.
I know. I mean, you can sort of laugh at it, but it's also like horrifically disrespectful to the American people, particularly those who voted for him on this issue.
Right. I agree. So that's not going to work for them.
But this is the thing, Dean. This is the thing. And this is like, again, not to go back to Scott Jennings, but why in this moment he's attacking me, a nobody, over my personal life versus the context of my
show on SiriusXM.
I appreciate that. But, over the context and the content of my family life, it's that these plants, these hacks, these guys and girls that toe this line don't even know what they're towing anymore. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, a lady who I share very little in common with, least of all how many bench presses she could do. She would put me to shame, but I share very little in common with her. She, crazy Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's too crazy for her. She sees the writing on the wall. She doesn't know what her party is anymore, and I guess she's stepping away. And I really believe, I mean, you could go back on forth in this, and I still can't make heads or tails of it, but you can call her stupid or silly or this or that. Nobody's stupid enough to give up a congressional seat. Even if you're seeking higher office, you wait and see how these races, if it's the gubernatorial race in Georgia, if it's going after Ossoff in the Senate, you wait and see how things shake up before you give that up. And the fact that she's giving it up this prematurely, I think she's a real true believer. She believes a lot of crazy stuff, but she's a true believer, and she's had a change of heart.
I think she moved from MAGA populism to more straightforward economic populism, and she realized the Republican Party is not there right now. And real economic populism, which simply is fighting for the working class, regardless what you really believe, but you're going to fight for them and the working poor, that's a winner. People are all
Zoran Mondami.
Yeah, that's what he did. So I think she realizes the writing's on the wall. And you say, look, I mean, your parents are very famous. In case people don't know who they are, I can say them if you want. But I'm saying, like, that drags you in a way. So Dylan's parents, his father's Michael Douglas, his mom's Catherine Zeta-Jones. And so you're, because of your family's household names, the media, when I write an article and there's any celebrity name in the title, it gets more clicks by far. When I make these new videos.
Yeah, it's clickbait, sure.
I put Jimmy Kimmel in the title, boom. Like, so that's it's the algorithm. It sucks it in. So whatever they think of you or not, they're like, celebrity sells, intersected with politics. It does so well. It transcends when I used to write for CNN, I wrote for 10 years, op-eds. When any op-ed had like SNL and politics or celebrity and politics, those are things that did crazily well for them, and they know that. So these, again, it's all calculated.
And I've lived with that my whole life. I mean, my dad had cancer a while back, and ever since, there's articles often that says Michael Douglas only 4 months to live. Well, listen, he's still standing, and so am I.
Right, and that's great, and thank God for that. That's really good. So, and I'm talking with Dylan Douglas, who's a host.
And he doesn't have cancer anymore, by the way. That was years ago. They just run the story.
That's great to hear, and I remember. I think I vaguely remember that, and I also know that your dad and my hen had the same acting teacher, which is the reason she has her one-person show, the great Wynn Hanman. Dylan, of course, the host of Young American with Dylan Douglas. Now, we just talked about how young men have pivoted to Democrats. But here's Democrats, I think, going too much patting themselves on the back.
Of course.
DNC chair Ken Martin said recently, just in the last week, after seeing the numbers after the election, he literally said, quote, "I never want to hear again that the Democratic Party has a problem with young men." I'm like, who says this? This is like, what? So we should never say, because we won this election, the off-year election, that's it. We figured out how to win young men. What do you say to that as a young guy?
Well, there's some people in the Democratic Party that's got to stop this nonsense. It's the same thing with Katie Porter. It's this aloofness that we are above the fray. There's no fray. It's a fight for the direction of the country, and there's many different versions of what that direction may be, very different opinions, but we all want the same thing, is a New Deal. I mean, that's your point about economic populism, is that call it everything. Is populism is funny because it's very, very popular. We want a new way forward. Every single election for the last 10 years has been a change election, even if the choices were still the same as it was in 2024 with Biden and Trump. It's a change election, because we want the change. And for someone like her to make that comment about, oh, we don't need any more, men, it's the same comment like Biden when he's like, you ain't black if you don't vote for Biden. Like, give me a break. Come on. And you know that they have the best PR companies and best focus groups working about trying to get the language right. And so for someone to say that, it's really amateurish and foolish.
He's the chair, Ken Martin. And Ken Martin also said, we want across the board. And this should tell you something. The Democratic Party is back. It is for this one election. Yeah. Americans have become so fickle. They're less aligned with either party. Their values don't change, but it gets eclipsed by economic need. And if in a year from now we're in a recession, that is going to be by far the biggest issue. By the way, where does, like the cyber currency bros, the cyber bros who love Trump are not loving him now with Bitcoin at 90,000, going to 85,000. Like the bottom is falling out.
Yeah. I mean, the corrupt ones do because they're going to get pardons, but I hear you.
Right, they do. But I wonder where that plays. Like in your generation, we have this idea that young guys are like, people have jobs, but then others are crypto bros who are making millions of dollars.
Sure.
I assume those are the exception, right? That's not like a typical experience, but I imagine a lot have money invested.
If I was making $1 million on crypto, I would be on a yacht somewhere, Dean. And you're a great hang, I got to say, but I don't think I'd be with you on this Tuesday night.
Well, you could do about from the yacht, but probably would be a
Yeah,
much more challenging time. So, what does it say? And this is about vibes. I'm glad you mentioned vibes.
sure.
There are a lot of comedians from the Brososphere, Mansosphere, who like Shane Gillis and other comics like that. Some people might know their names, or others don't. They like Trump, even Andrew Schultz and stuff like that. And they've broken from him. And Shane Gillis, who's a well-known comedian for younger people, over the last week, was saying about Trump showing signs of dementia. He said, quote, he's definitely not at Biden brains yet, but he's circling the drain. That's the vibe now, 11 months in. Does this vibe mean something for young men? This kind of expression, this kind of conversation by Shane Gillis and the other comedians?
100%. And just to go back to the Zoran Mondani example, I mean, we're both New Yorkers. Zoran was able to do something that I had not witnessed firsthand. I mean, you could argue that Trump did it in a way, but it wasn't as acutely like seen by me as what Zoran did. Was he made an actual brand, a brand. He had campaign tote bags that people would buy, not because they want to support the campaign, but because it was a status of coolness within the city. I mean, you must have felt that. Being a Zoran supporter was not just because you liked his policies. For many people that would not go out and vote, it became like a social faux pas not to go vote and not to support this guy. And you can come up with a million reasons about how that energy and that comes together to create that sort of real movement, a cultural phenomenon. And Zoran Mondani was like that. And I think Trump was like that to a time. But like every fad, it becomes tired and old, much like the current president. And so I think we're just seeing that sort of fade, not to mention just the state of the economy and the state of the world when you had people that voted for him for isolation, but we're about to bomb Venezuela, when you had people that voted for him to keep drugs out, but he's pardoning the biggest drug lords in world history. And the list of contradictions goes on and on and on.
Yep. And think about this. Donald Trump's brand was developed over decades.
Sure.
In New York, developing buildings, having a show like The Apprentice. Zoran was built in 1 year. 1 year ago today, nobody knew the names. I knew Zoran because I know him from Muslim Democratic stuff. But he was literally starting his first videos a year ago now, where he went to Trump supporters in New York and said, why'd you vote for Trump? And he's releasing these videos. And this was the time he used to respond to my text messages. And, I'm like, come on the show. Let's talk about this kind of stuff, that kind of things. And he came on early in the primary. And I talked to him in the past about political stuff and really nice guy. And I will say, when I first saw him speak at a Muslim Democratic meeting like 2 years ago, just like 50 people there, and I don't usually go to the meeting. I was actually telling jokes at the meeting. That's what they wanted me there for, something. He spoke, and I was like, it's only 50 people. I'm like, this guy's good. I was like, was that clear? It's like watching a star comedian,
Yes.
like a young star comedian or a young performer on stage. You're like, oh my God, like that's how I was like, oh my God,
They have it.
like, right? And I didn't think, though, a year later, he said to me at the meeting, it was a year and a half ago, I'm going to run for mayor. I'm like, sure, yeah, whatever. Like, okay, that's kind of fun, kid. Keep me in mind, that kind of thing. And then he texted me when he was running. I didn't even get back to him. I'm like, okay, we'll have him on the show later. And I got back to him later, and they had him on the show. But think about his branding. His entire movement began 1 year ago, and where it ended up with. This is, I don't know if we've seen this.
Yes.
Barack Obama is probably the closest, and he had already been a U.S. senator. But even then, and he did the big DNC speech in 2004 for John Kerry, the famous red state, blue state. That began it. So 4 years later, what we saw with Zoran, there's so much convergence of things that made this happen. It was a different economy, different
And in
time,
a moment where, on the economic front and just generally as a Democrat, as an American, things feel so dark, he ran a campaign that was centered on joy. And that was so sort of unique. And Trump, too, not in the joy sense, but he had his whole like Trump brand and Trump Hotel and Trump board game and whatever else. But he slapped his name on an existing movement. You saw the Tea Party movement. I mean, he pretty much just marched himself to the front of the parade and put on the MAGA hat and became the sort of figurehead. And Zoran Mondani, not that what he was doing was not genuine, but this sentiment, this populism, right, left, center, We're just trying to move forward. It's been simmering for so long, and I think the Democrats have shot themselves in the foot time and time again, where if it was 2016 with Bernie or others, or 2020 or beyond, have when the sort of rumblings of our own version of economic populism, which I might add doesn't come with the same xenophobia and misogyny and hate and lies that the right-wing version does, when that starts boiling up to the surface, and maybe there's a chance that this could be the new model of Democratic Party, the bigwigs in power put their foot down and try to derail this grassroots movement. I've seen it time and time again. Boy, did we see it in New York, but in New York, Zoran prevailed, and much against the odds.
Very much so. And last thing, because Zoran won of people under 45, he won 70%. And
Yeah.
the really young cohort, he won off the charts. I know their big thing, and then I've spoken to some people from the campaign, during the campaign, and now, is he's going to stay in the media. He's going to be running a campaign, and all politicians say that, but I think he's sincere about this. How do you think he keeps – you can't keep the energy of that campaign, because a campaign's a campaign. He's going to be governing now. You're going to disappoint people here or there. But what would you recommend for him to keep young people engaged, the younger generation engaged and still believing in him?
It's simple. You deliver. You do what you said you were going to do. Just like those that voted Republicans and independents, because Republican support for Trump, for example, is decreasing, eroding slightly, and he's been pretty stable. But independent support for him has absolutely collapsed. And it's because the things he promised to do, he hasn't done. Maybe the price of eggs are down. The price of everything else, gasoline and inflation, I might add, are slightly up. And at the same time, when Trump, the cornerstone of his foreign policy was get out, get out, get out. And I think we should stay in some cases. I think I'm wearing my Ukraine shirt right now. I think we should stay in Ukraine. I think we should continue that fight. But when his foreign policy was get out, isolation, isolation, isolation. I mean, Dean, we're looking in the next, imminently, I think the next weeks or so, targeted strikes within a sovereign country. I mean, say what you want about Venezuela and the regime. They're not non-state actors like the Taliban. This is a real country, a government entity with a seat in the UN. And we're going to be carrying out strikes on government facilities, maybe military facilities, definitely narco facilities within Venezuela. That sort of aventurism, jingoism in Latin America, I don't think was anything that Republicans, independents, or Democrats had on their bingo card.
Yeah, and it's a very old school Republican point of view of things, of trying to control Latin America, South America.
It's a Rubio thing. Trump's just along for the ride.
Interesting. Yeah.
Cuban American.
I haven't seen the video today. Rubio talking, and Trump goes like, while he's talking, Trump's eyes started closing. He's sitting right next to him. And I was telling people, imagine you have a meeting with your boss and 5 people, and you start talking to your boss. He starts closing his eyes and going like that. You'd be like, something's wrong with the boss, everybody. But not with Trump. They're like,
well, a follow-up MRI? I mean, you don't get a follow-up. That's a whole other thing. You don't get a follow-up MRI. What's the deal there, you know? And he promised, again, another promise not kept, to be transparent about his medical history.
And he doesn't even know what part of his body he got the MRI on, and which is really funny. He literally said that. I don't know.
He can't remember.
He can't remember. And I played a clip of Colbert earlier. But well, Dylan, by the way, where can people follow you? Do you prefer Instagram? Is it?
Follow me on Instagram, Dylan_Douglas. I'm on Twitter. I never post on Twitter, but if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's a very lonely space. But Instagram is my main setting of social media. I'm a dyslexic guy, so I like pictures.
All right, very good. I'm glad we cleared this whole thing up with Scott Jennings, and now you are declared the winner. That's what you do. You declare yourself the winner of every Twitter fight I used to have. I'm like, I won, and they go, no, we won. I'm like, that's not how it works. Same thing on cable news. So you kicked his ass. That's the bottom line and all that. Happy holidays to you. If I don't tell you before the holidays, to you and your family, and I hope your mom never has dinner with that jackass. So I think she's never going to have that. All right, brother. Nice seeing you. Thanks so much.
Dean, thank you. Always a pleasure.